Hi, I'm Jacqueline Rinksmeyer, Executive Director of the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us today to watch our annual Candidates Forum. We do this event in partnership with Medina TV, and I'm here today with General Manager Jared Fry.
Thank you, Jacqueline. You will notice today, as Jacqueline and I do not have our mask on, and as I interview these candidates, I will not be wearing a mask, nor will the candidates. We are following all the Department of Health guidelines in regards to spatial distancing, and with being on air and doing a broadcast, masks are not required.
All candidates in local contested races were invited to participate in these interviews. This forum is designed to inform the voting public of their choices in the upcoming election.
The views and opinions stated by the candidates during the course of these interviews are not necessarily those of Medina TV and the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for exercising your right to vote in the upcoming election. Enjoy the Candidates Forum.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of our Candidates Forum, where we are graciously joined by Pam Miller, the chair of the Medina County Board of Elections, and she's here to help clarify some of the questions or maybe misconceptions that have gone on here recently, to clear things up for us as we head to the ballot box this November, which is actually kind of a weird way to say it now, because you can actually go and vote your ballot a little earlier than November now that some things have changed, and we're glad you could join us here to discuss some of those changes, Pam.
Thanks, Jared. It's good to be here this morning.
First, start off and just tell us a little bit, just for the residents that may not know, tell us a little bit about the Board of Elections, kind of how it's set up and what the Board of Elections does.
Okay, well, first of all, the Board of Elections is located on Stonegate Drive, 3800 Stonegate Drive, which is just off 42 North. It's behind Hobby Lobby and the pool place. So it's pretty easy, pretty accessible. The board it's a bipartisan office, so we have our director happens to be a Republican, our deputy director is a Democrat, and all of our employees in the building, there are about 10 employees, they're of each party. So everything that occurs in the Board of Elections is done on a bipartisan manner. To protect the vote, to protect people's ability to vote.
Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of the check and balance there by having the bipartisan, just to make sure whatever goes on as you tabulate and receive the votes, that it's fair and equal. Mm-hmm. I guess one of the biggest changes that's happened, of course, we've always had early voting or absentee ballot voting in the past, but now with COVID-19 and some of the changes that have come in, kind of talk us through what are the options for voters this November.
Okay, well, there have always been three ways to vote in Ohio. You can vote early in person, starting October 6th at the Board of Elections office. You can vote absentee by mail, by filling out an application and applying for that absentee ballot. You can also vote in person on November 3rd at your polling place. And October 5th, of course, is the very last day for registering to vote. So you want to make sure that you're registered. The office will be open until 9 p.m. that day if you need to do it in person. But the really easy way to do that and to check to see if you are registered is to go to voteohio.gov. That's voteohio.gov. You can check to see if you're registered. If you're not registered, you can actually register online, or you can download the registration form and mail it or take it into the Board of Elections. You can also check what your polling place, so you'll know where to go on Election Day. If you need to make a change in your voter registration, that also has to happen by October 5th. If, for instance, if you've moved or if you have changed your name. You can also, you can apply for an absentee ballot application at voteohio.gov. And what you do is you download and print the form and then fill it out, and you have to mail it or drop it off at the Board of Elections. And then you can actually track the application itself to see when it gets to the board and when it's been processed. You'll also be able to track when your ballot is sent to you, and then after you sent your ballot back, whether it's been whether it's gotten back to the board. So voteohio.gov is a very handy thing to remember.
Nice. So a nice way to the equivalent of tracking your package if you shipped it somewhere.
Exactly.
It tracks your vote going from you back to the Board of Elections. That's a very nice way to do that. Now, in terms of registering the vote, it used to be the old days with when you did your driver's license, you could do it there. Is that still an option available as well?
Yes.
Okay, now what if, in light of all this COVID-19, that a lot of people may not, or are in the process of trying to get their license renewed because of BMV being closed? What happens if I guess where that would come in is they go to check in at their polling place, but their license is out of date. What happens?
Yeah, it has always been that if you're using your license for ID when you go to vote, that it has to be an unexpired license. But this year, there has been a special dispensation given, basically, that if your license expired March 9th, I believe it is, or after, and you have not yet been able to get it renewed, it is okay. This year only.
All right, and that's good. A good exception to have, and a good way to still allow people to come out and vote, because that's the main goal. You want people to be able to come out and vote and try to make that as smooth as possible for them.
Yes.
In terms of the in-person voting, especially at the Board of Elections, how do they go about doing that process if they want to do that?
So what you would do is you would go to the Board of Elections during the hours for voting, and the hours at the first 2 weeks, voting will be, the first week it'll be Tuesday through Friday from 8 to 5. And then after that, it's Monday through Friday from 8 until 5. Starting October 19th through the 23rd, you can vote Monday through Friday from 8 to 6. And you'll be able to vote on October 24th and October 25th, which are Saturday and a Sunday, from 8 to 4 and 1 to 5. And then the following week, before the election, October 26th through the 30th, you can vote from 8 to 7. And then on that last weekend before the election day, you can vote from 8 to 4 and then 1 to 4 on Sunday. And then on Monday, November 2nd, that's the last day for in-person voting, and that's from 8 a.m. till 2 p.m. So what you would do is you would go to the board office on Stonegate Drive. All you would do, you would have to show the same kind of ID that you would show if you were going to vote in person on election day. We're asking everybody to wear a mask. We will be social distancing. We will be have in place all sorts of protocols for hand sanitizer, disinfecting the machines, trying to keep things really safe for people.
So expect, I guess, a little longer wait than usual if people have done that in the past just because of those safety protocols?
It should go pretty smoothly, but I think it's going to look longer because if you're standing distanced in a line, it's going to look like a longer line than if you're all standing huddled together. So, but we do ask people to please be patient. This is different. We have to protect the public. We have to protect our poll workers and our election workers in the board office. And so we really hope that people will comply with all of these safety protocols.
And that's an excellent point you brought up, that if you're pulling up to the building and see a line out the door, it may not necessarily be that long of a line. It's just the spatial distancing makes it appear that way. Yes. So the line will move fairly quickly. And when they turn that in, they can be assured that they will get their correct card for their voting precinct, whether it's city, county, or township. They'll have the correct cards.
Yes.
So that's an excellent point. Now, in terms of the mail-in voting, still is the same as it always has been. Just kind of the steps of applying. I guess one of the biggest confusion maybe for people is so many people this year, it seems to me, are mailing out forms for you to apply for that voting. So basically, they only have to apply once, correct? Kind of walk us through the step of doing that.
Okay, so you can apply for an application. You can get an application several ways. There have been some that have been mailed by different organizations. The Secretary of State has recently mailed an application to everybody. What we're really telling everybody to do this year is to get your application in early. We want to flatten the curve, have people vote early as much as possible to avoid long lines and confusion on election day. And we don't know what's going to happen with the virus, so we just think it's better to plan ahead and to do it early. When you fill out your application, and you can get it, as I said, many different ways. You can download it yourself. You might have gotten it in the mail. You only have to send it in once. So if you send it in once, don't send it in again, even if it looks like a different form. It's very important to have all the proper information on it to make sure that your your date of birth is there, your ID, and your signature. And we also ask that people put on their email or phone, because if there's something missing on your application or incorrect on your application, we have to contact you to correct it. So we can do that by phoning you and telling you that we're going to be sending you a new form for you to fill out and what you have missed on it or need to correct on it. If you don't have that phone or email, it just makes it a little bit longer. We have to, we still have to send out a letter and get people's information back. So we're asking people to do that as early as possible so that all of us can be more prepared and get a head start on it.
Now, is there something that if you do have to reach out to someone via email or phone, is there a way that you identify or set yourself apart so that people realize you actually are from the Board of Elections and not possibly a scammer or something like that that's happening?
Well, we identify ourselves on the phone, and we give the phone number that for them to call back, so they could see that it was the correct number. We're going to be sending you an email that it'll have a .gov name on it. But the thing is, we have to mail to you anyway, because you're going to have to come in. You're going to have to fill out a new form, so we're going to be sending you that form so you can send it back to us. And I should mention that we now have a drop box outside the Board of Elections office, and that can be used for if you want to bring your application in, you can just drop it in that. If you have a voter registration form, you can drop it in that, and once you get your ballot, you can also drop your ballot in that and avoid using the mails.
Okay. And I know that's been a point of discussion here recently, and it changes day to day as far as how many drop boxes there are, but there is at least the one currently in front of the Board of Elections.
Yes, and it's monitored 24/7 with cameras.
Sure. And so a good way to watch it. And that's a great question too then. I guess the steps are already in place again, but again, just I think in light of everything going on in society today, everyone's worried about these things. So kind of just reassure our residents and voters in terms of your protections against voter fraud.
Okay, well, yes, first of all, there is really very, very little voter fraud that occurs. There are so many things in place to keep that from happening. Once you have your ballot and you either drop it in the box or send it in the mail, if you drop it in the box, for instance, it's a box that can be opened with two keys, a Republican key and a Democratic key. So you have to have an R and a D from the office go out and open it. At all times, those ballots are going to be in a bipartisan team as they're opened, as they're examined to see if the ID envelope is correct, as they're taken out of that, as they're scanned. Everything is going to be with a bipartisan team. So there's no way that somebody's going to be sneaking your ballot off and doing anything with it. That just can't happen. And
then as far as checking, if anyone requests the mail-in ballots, there's a check and balance that goes with that, like you said. When it comes in, those are checked to make sure those people, I guess for lack of a better term, match up.
Yeah, well, the ID envelope that you put your ballot in, the ballot goes into two envelopes, an ID envelope, and on that ID envelope you have to put your date of birth, your ID, and your signature. So, and that's in an outside envelope. So when it comes, it can't be identified as to who sent that in. Mm-hmm. So then when it's opened, the ID envelope is examined by this bipartisan team to see if it has the correct information. And then if something is missing or if something's incorrect, the voter is contacted and has a period of time, has a period of time within 7 days after Election Day to correct that information so that ballot can be counted. Okay, good.
Now, in terms of the in-person voting, if it comes Election Day and the people that do come there, I guess we'll hit two fronts. One, are there any changes that people are going to see as they head to the polls to vote in November if they go in person?
Well, we're asking people to wear masks. All of our poll workers and people working at the polls will be wearing masks. We will have shields around our poll workers, so there's some separation from the voters. We'll have social distancing with our lines. The machines will be spread out a little bit more. So yeah, it's going to look different and feel different.
And again, that same approach, the lines may look longer, but may not be just due to that spatial distancing, and the sanitation process will still be the same as
correct. Yeah.
at the Board of Elections.
Right.
Now also, I guess that's something else to touch on. poll workers. That's always been a big issue. Usually a base, mostly have been seniors in the past, but in light of the COVID crisis and some scares with health concerns, is there still a shortage, and is there a need for poll workers?
We still need poll workers. We've had many of our older poll workers opt not to work this time, so we've been recruiting poll workers all summer. We've got a lot of new ones in. We can still use more, and I urge anybody who is interested in being a poll worker to call the Board of Elections at 330-722-9278. We're doing, a poll worker has to go through training for several hours before they can work at the polls, and we're conducting the training this week and next, and we'll have some last-minute ones in October as we get closer.
And I'll give you a chance to go ahead and repeat that phone number again in case someone didn't have their pen and paper ready.
Yes, it's 330-722-9278.
Perfect, and that's a good way to help out in the process, especially during these times, to step up and do your part for the process. Yeah. Okay, so we kind of touched on all the different ways the voting can happen and people can cast their ballot. Now kind of walk us through when we get to Election Day and it's time to start tabulating those votes. What will be the process for the Board of Elections?
Right. Well, the polls close at 7:30, and at that point, all the polling places close up their machines and get their memory sticks, and those are brought back to the Board of Elections. Meanwhile, at the Board of Elections at 7:30, all of the absentee ballots that have come in as of that time will have been scanned in the several days before the election. They'll be digitally scanned, not counted, not tabulated, but just scanned. So at 7:30 on Election Day, they will be tabulated, and those are the votes that are reported the earliest. And then as the evening goes on, as the information comes back from the polling places, we upload that so we can report out. But I think it's probably going to be another long night. We have many, we are already at over 24,000 absentee ballot requests. In 2016, we sent out a total of 18,000 absentee ballots. So considering the time of that it's just midway through September, we know it's going to be a lot. And so those ballots have to be, I should have mentioned this earlier, ballots have to be postmarked by November 2nd, the day before the election. And it has to have an actual postmark from the post office on it. So those ballots then have 10 days to actually get to the Board of Elections. So unless you've mailed yours, and that's really why we're telling people to try to get their absentee ballot early so they can mail it in early or so they can drop it off in the drop box early. But those ballots still would not be counted on Election Day if they haven't come in yet. But they'll be coming in those 10 days, and then they will be counted for the official certification day, which is about 3 weeks later. So early is what we're really asking people to do. On election night, we're sure that it'll probably be a late night.
Yeah. And well, not only that, you don't know, as we've had in years past, there could be lawyers at work. I know a couple years ago we had some injunctions that kind of held things up for a little while, and got it moving. So hopefully everything goes smoothly, and it's just a matter of just tabulating those numbers. But that's a great point that you brought up with the certification. Why don't you, walk us through how that process happens. So we'll get our, I guess the best way to say it, the unofficial final results at whatever time it is on election night. And we've had cases in the past where you have very close races. I mean, a handful of votes, less than 1%, sometimes less than 2 votes, 5 votes. We've had those in the past. You'll have those situations. But now with that mailing date, kind of talk us through the certification to kind of get us to those final results.
So after Election Day, we would have to count any absentee ballots that are still coming in. We also have to look at the provisional ballots that people voted as to whether or not they can be counted, and any absent. I'm trying to figure out how to best say this. So we would have both provisional ballots and absentee ballots that we're still dealing with after the election. And so it's sort of like a cleanup time.
Well, absentees that were postmarked with the correct date, but wasn't received on election night.
Yeah, okay. Or some of the out-of-country ballots that are what we call the UOCAVA ballots that might come from those who are overseas, from those in the military that are still coming in. So those still would have to be counted, and they can make a difference. And then again, we have to look at those provisional ballots and make sure that they're correct and that they can be counted. So a lot can happen in a close vote. Yeah.
And I guess there's an automatic recount that kicks into place, isn't there? If it's a certain percentage.
Yes. Yeah. It's a tiny percentage. I think it's something like, I don't know.
It's like 1% or less, something like that.
Half of 1% or something like that. Yeah.
And then they would automatically recount. In those situations. But hopefully when it's certified, then that's the final vote, and the elections then proceed with the winners taking office then in January. And I know, like you talked about earlier too, you mentioned the ballots that are being mailed out. And I know in the state of Ohio, there are up to 1.38 million ballots. And in 2016, there was only 96,000 requested. And again, that's still at the September date. So those numbers are even going to climb more. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. A lot more people doing the mail-in option with those. So I guess to clarify another thing, now that I'm speaking about the mail-ins, and it slipped my mind till just now again, there have been statements made by other political officials to double check if you did your mail-in to show up on election day and go to your polling place to check your vote. Recommendations on things like that.
Please do not do that. We've had people say, well, I requested a ballot, but I think I'd rather go vote in person. If you do that, you're going to have to vote a provisional ballot. And that really is doubling the work for everybody. Your provisional ballot will then be checked to see if you voted an absentee ballot. We can't just let ballots be floating around everywhere. So if that ballot never came in, then that provisional ballot will be counted. But if you already voted by absentee, you sent it in. First of all, at the Board of Elections, if your ballot has come in before Election Day, we have a record of that. And so if you go into the polling place and you want to vote again and you've already voted absentee, we're not going to let you. But if you haven't voted that ballot, you'll have to vote a provisional ballot.
And again, that's where the website comes in handy that can track your mailing of your ballot. And actually give that website again, too, since we just brought it up.
So it's voteohio.gov.
Okay, and that's a good way to track that. Now, how long should a person wait from mailing in, if they applied to have a mail-in ballot come to them? When should they be concerned if they have not received that?
Well, the mail-in ballots will not go out until October 6th. Okay. So if you've already got your application in now, your ballot should be coming shortly after October 6th. I can't predict what the mail will be, but 3 to 5 days maybe. We have had assurances from the post office that they're going that all election mail is a priority to them. So we expect that it should go smoothly, and that the intent is that things will get out rapidly. But I realize that it might be a little bit longer than usual. And so if your ballot comes, you get it you then want to get it in the mail immediately. You don't wait until the end, because you don't want to risk having it not get there in time, and you don't want to be scrambling on the day before Election Day to get the postage on it.
Right, and if in doubt, then that's the perfect opportunity to take advantage of those drop boxes.
Of the drop box, right, yeah. And I should also mention that the stamp that you need to put on it is only a regular 55-cent stamp, so there's no need for any kind of extra postage.
Okay. So just the normal stamp can go on that and then mailed out. And then again, go to the website there and check out the status to make sure it got in there. Yeah. So I guess the best advice maybe for a voter that's coming up on that deadline, if you're within 2 or 3 days, you might be better served going to the drop box and dropping it off instead of taking that risk of maybe not having it stamped with the correct date to qualify to be a valid vote.
Yes.
So a good point to do that. I was trying to think, we covered a lot of stuff here. Is there, I guess, no, we talked about certification of the vote afterwards. Anything I'm missing that you want the voters to know from the Board of Elections?
People sometimes ask what kind of ID that they need to have when they want to vote, and you need to have a valid photo ID. It's usually a driver's license, but if for some reason you don't have a driver's license, a military ID will work. You can also bring a current utility bill or bank statement, government check or paycheck, as long as it shows your address on it. Don't bring your passport because it doesn't have your address on it.
Would you need the passport just for the photo side of it, or you're more worried about the name and address?
You have to have the address.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this year, I know people have wondered about if they weren't able to get their license renewed, because technically it has to be an unexpired license. But because of COVID and because of the BMVs being closed for a certain period of time, people have not necessarily been able to get their licenses renewed if they expired March 9th or any time after that. So in this case, an expired license would be okay.
Okay. Just for this year.
This time only.
Hopefully just for this year, yes.
Yeah.
Or buy this by then. And then again, I guess the key is just the big stress for everyone, just to get out and vote. And I guess the big thing again too for people to check if they're not sure, of course if they haven't gone to the BMV or had a chance to get in there yet to check and see if they're registered to vote, go ahead and give us the website again too where people can go check that out.
So the website is voteohio.gov. And we're really trying to get everybody to basically flatten the curve, do it early, have a plan in mind, and apply for your absentee ballot now, plan to vote early in person, and then if you have to vote on Election Day, feel safe about doing it.
Yeah, and it's great hours. We'll have those hours posted too if you want to come in person to the Board of Elections to vote. We'll make sure we get those hours up on our screen here so everyone can see those as they will lengthen as we get closer to Election Day, and give everyone that opportunity to get in and vote if they don't want to do the mail-in and don't want to wait till Election Day to go in. They can kind of go. Now, when do those open again for the in-person for the Board of Elections?
First day is Tuesday, October 6th.
Okay, make sure we have that out there for everybody. I think we've hit everything a couple times. I want to make sure we were clear for everyone in case they were just tuning in. Anything else from the Board of Elections for us?
I think that's really about all. I just tell people to make a plan and do it early.
Yeah, and the only way to make change is to be a part of that. And
yes.
That's you got to step up and do your part as a country, and that's what makes us one of the best countries, is to be able to go out and have that ability to vote. So make sure we take advantage of that. And I want to thank you for giving us some of your time here today, as you guys are going to get very, very busy here in the coming months. But again, Pam Miller, Chair of the Medina County Board of Elections, joining us here today. We appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jared.